Warmly welcoming you to How Does She Do It, the podcast, with me, your host, Jo Ferrone. Join me on my journey as I explore finding a gentle balance in both business and life, because being kind to ourselves is our superpower. I bring you something different today, and I do hope it will be well received. This episode isn't hosted by me. Instead, I welcome my guest host, the wondrous Pam Cottman, a former guest, tune into episode 12 when you can, an inspirational business owner and member of the How Does She Do It community too. I was honoured to have this table-turning conversation with Pam, and I thank her from the bottom of my heart for making the suggestion in the first place. Before we move on to the show, I wanted to invite you to click the link in the show notes to hear a little bit more about my 2022 mastermind programs as I attempt to get more visible and actually promote my services, because I'm so much better at promoting the businesses of others. I've put together a fab infographic mapping out some of the many benefits you'd gain from joining me in your own mastermind group. But now I want you to grab yourself a cuppa and curl up on the sofa and join us for this transparent and heartfelt conversation. Over to Pam.
So welcome to this episode of How Does She Do It? My name is not Jo Ferrone, as you might already be able to tell. My name is Pam Cottman, and it's my excited, mildly terrified pleasure to be hosting this episode for you. It comes off the back of an episode that I recorded with Jo a few months ago, and I loved it. And at the end, I said to her, Jo, have you thought about allowing someone to interview you for this podcast so that all of us who listen can have a chance to learn a bit more about your story? And, well, I'll allow Jo to let you know what she said. Hi, Jo. How are you doing today?
Hello, my love. I'm good. As I said before we pressed record, I'm slightly, I thought I was nervous, but then I realized I'm not nervous. I'm just a little bit apprehensive. I'm hoping that I'm going to be a good enough guest for you today.
I feel very confident that you will be, knowing how this podcast works and the kind of questions that you ask of your guests. I am going to absolutely flip the tables today in the nicest, kindest way that I can, so that we get to learn a bit more about your journey to where you are now, and to learn a bit more about what running How Does She Do It really looks and feels like. And I know that there's going to be so much that people take away from this conversation. So at this point in the conversation, I would like to do that turning the table thing, having been the person asked questions about my life and what I'm doing. I would really love to invite you to talk about your story, Jo, and give us the chance to hear about what it is that's taken you up to where you are now. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about what came before working for yourself.
Okay, so I'm going to keep it fairly short. So in a nutshell, I did the corporate thing and the London thing and loved it, although there were so many times when I didn't want to be on a commuter train squashed between people's armpits, and it wasn't all glossy and amazing, but it was a great experience for me. I loved corporate life. I then got quite ill when I was pregnant first time round and second time round, but when it happened first time round, it was quite a big thing, because I thought I had 7-8 months to get used to stepping away from work to become a mum. But actually only a few weeks into my pregnancy, I got so ill that they literally sent me home in a taxi, and I ended up in hospital that afternoon. So I had an unexpectedly cut off corporate life, if you like. My career suddenly came to a much more abrupt halt than I expected. And I do think that that's affected me quite a lot. So I went on to have a healthy baby, and, I'm so grateful for that. But what I realized was, having stepped away from work because I decided to be a stay-at-home mum and be with him full time, it had a real effect on my confidence in terms of, I I lost it. I lost all the confidence, and I wasn't necessarily the most confident person in the first place, but I'd worked really hard throughout my corporate life to build my confidence and my resilience, I should probably add. And so I got to the point where I felt I needed to rediscover whether Jo still had a business brain.
Mm-hmm.
And that might sound really strange to people, but I did question my abilities. Where had it all gone? Why was I suddenly this person who would not have felt comfortable in a working environment? And so I did actually work for Usborne Books for a little while, so selling children's books, which was brilliant for me to enjoy the books with my son, but also to start sharing that joy with other people. And that really did help. And I had a lovely time doing that. But then I damaged my back actually during my second pregnancy. And the idea of carting books around, it was just a non-starter. So I stopped working with Usborne then and had my second son. It was after that I thought, well, what now? I wasn't going to do the books. They were physically too heavy for me to work with. And so it was about me going on a little journey to try and find my business brain again and rebuild my confidence again. And so I decided to try offering my services as a virtual assistant to small businesses. But I didn't have the confidence. So I approached a small business and said something along the lines of, I'm sure you're doing a great job with your business, but she told me she was a very busy person and it was all a big old juggle. I said, would you like me to assist you and come up with some ideas for your business? But I won't charge you anything because I've come to you and I'm just trying to build my confidence again. And she's like, well, okay, yeah, let's do that. And so I went away and I pretty much, now I look at it, did a business brainstorm for her. And then we met in a pub one night and I shared it with her and she just lit up and she said, yes, let's do it. This is amazing. And she then became my first paying client, having worked for her for nothing to begin with. And so the virtual assistant business was then born. And for me, that was it was a very key and instrumental time for me because I was able to step out my comfort zone and speak to someone like that, which took an awful lot of, I had to really, really find something within me to do that. It didn't come naturally. But then doing the work, I was able to do the work behind the scenes. Does that make sense? I was able to do what I did really well, but I wasn't kind of exposed to people's views or criticisms or anything. It was something I could do in between the boys being at preschool and infant school, and something I could do in the privacy of my own home. So I gradually built my confidence up that way. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm loving hearing this and all these different bits on your journey. And we haven't even got to where you are now, but I really love to dive back into a couple of things that you mentioned. One was something really resonated in terms of that disrupted ending to your corporate life, and you said that that's something that has affected you, and I'm sure is something that other people listening will be familiar to them, I'm sure. And I wonder if there's something you could tell us a little bit around that and how you think that abrupt departure from corporate life affected you then and how you think about it now.
That's such a great question. I was in such a place at that time when I was feeling so unwell and so poorly that in a way it was good that I didn't have time to think about it at the time. I just had to surrender to it. But it did feel really, really wrong because I'm an organized person. I'm not the kind of person that would drop my team in it and leave them with stuff to do. And I'm kind of glad that I felt so ill that I wasn't able to feel too much guilt at the time, but it just was so out of my control. And I think that, I know that when I had to put a pause on my business last year during the pandemic, it wasn't just about the pandemic. And what was amazing was someone in our community who is just, a very astute and very kind person said to me, she messaged me and said, I wonder whether you need to perhaps speak to someone about what you're going through, because I'd made an announcement that I was just pressing pause. And I ended up getting some therapy, and it was incredible how many similarities there were between that time when I was suddenly ill and left the office for a very long time, and the pandemic. None of it was in my control. It all happened quite quickly. If you remember, when we suddenly went into lockdown, and the isolation, that was something that it was almost like reliving the isolation that I'd experienced in my pregnancy, because I did not see anyone because I was so ill, being very poorly many times a day, or being in hospital on a drip. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. That sounds incredibly hard, and how wonderful that someone in the community you created was able to reach out to you and say, would it be useful to talk to someone? And that through that, you were able to make those parallels between that really isolating, difficult, uncertain period you'd had a number of years ago and this period of great difficulty, uncertainty, and isolation. I remember you posting about isolation last year and it bringing up a lot for you. I mean, what has that process of looking back on that period from a number of years ago and the experience that you had last year at the start of the pandemic, what's that taught you, shown you that you need moving forward?
I just think that the main thing it taught me was that however resilient we are, that we think we are, there's always a benefit in maybe reaching out and asking for help or speaking with someone, because I just work through these things and almost tell myself sometimes, come on, it's okay, you can do this. Like I'm sure many of us do. We have these little internal conversations with ourselves. But for someone to have recognized that I needed some support at that time was pure magic. And to be able to talk through these things, I think I realized that at the time, I can feel a wobble in my voice. At the time, how do you deal with something like that? Because, and I'm not saying that this is the biggest thing anyone's ever been through. I know people go through so much more, but I was really poorly. Then I had a really bad labor, which lasted a long time. And then, of course, what happens? You're suddenly the parent of this little bubba that you've never parented anyone before. So at what point do you stop to go, hang on a minute, there are some things I need to deal with right now. I'm going to book myself a therapist. It just didn't happen. And well, my eldest just turned 15. Okay, 15 years old. So I think I'd just like to say to people that, if there's anything that you've been through, whether it was, 10 years ago or whether it was 6 months ago, really consider speaking to someone about it, because I'm not very good at speaking with my friends about these things either. So a lot of stuff gets internalized, and I don't think we realize how much it affects us.
I think that piece you mentioned around resilience includes reaching out for help. I mean, resilience is what I spend my days talking about, and I'm absolutely with you. And I think there almost comes a point sometimes, certainly in my experience, where it's about the right time. There you are, 15 years or however many, I think it was last year you're saying you kind of had your therapy experience, but 14 years after the event was when you had the time space to do it. I think there's something really powerful too in what you said about acknowledging your own challenges. I read something, I can't remember who it was, but the idea of comparative suffering. We spend so much of our time saying, oh, but it's not as bad as what so-and-so's been through. And so we just squish all the feelings down, so because they're not as bad as somebody else. And actually, what's that saying about our experience? And as you said, to have gone through what you went through in pregnancy, and then, you've got the identity shift again into, and now I'm parent, and I'm not going back into corporate role, and this is my new identity, without having really thought about what you've been through, how that's changed you, what you now want moving forward. Yeah, you think if there was a gift you could give to all mothers, it's to give them a space, or actually anybody who's been through any form of challenge, a space where they can pause and have an honest conversation with somebody about what they've been through, and just let go of that load. I'm just picturing that weight that we carry so often. And when you let it go by talking to somebody, the lightness that can come from it, even if it takes a little while.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm almost imagining like a holding space that you can go into this safe place and almost like time stand still. Because, of course, as people that run our own businesses, some of us are parents, some of us aren't, but life does tend to just kind of carry on. And when is the right time for you to stop and deal with something? I don't think that we're necessarily that great at honoring ourselves that time, are we? Any of us? So, yeah, I think it's really valuable, really valuable.
And what I love in what you said before about that idea of, you had someone within your community who reached out and gave you support, but who are the people around us? I talk about the idea of a bench that we create for ourselves. Who gets to sit on your bench? Who are the people that, okay, maybe you don't feel that you want to have that conversation with them, but the people who notice and the people who pay attention to what you do say and can maybe notice there might be some things you're not saying in there, and perhaps this is time to reach out. We need to make sure we've got people like that in our lives. So we got as far as the VA part of your business, the virtual assistant piece. And the other bit I wanted to ask in and around that was, you mentioned the word confidence and a couple of times, and it was, confidence was, you felt that your confidence levels were depleted. Again, that word coming back as a result of the transition out of corporate life, and you had your experience with Osborne Books, and that topped up your confidence. But what was it that gave you the confidence to reach out to somebody to say, hiya, I might be able to help you with this? How did you do that?
So I think I'd got to the point where I probably hadn't been pushing out of my comfort zone, actually. And so I felt that there needed to be something else in my life, perhaps to kind of remind myself who I was as a person. And I saw this thing come up, which was a local mums kind of gathering. I think it was from a Facebook group or something. And I said to my husband, I said, I'm going to go to that. I'm going to go to it. And I'm not going to take I'm not going to take a friend with me. I'm going to almost remove any kind of safety net and just walk into this place and see what happens. And if I don't have the confidence to talk to anyone, then I'll walk back out and come back home, and no one need know, sort of thing. So I went to this event, and I must admit it was incredibly difficult, and it was, some might say, a little cliquey. It's certainly how it felt to me. There were lots of small groups of people gathered around having their drinks. And I don't know about you, but when you walk into a room, your eyes kind of dart around and you think, okay, what's my next move? I need to make my next move pretty quickly, because you don't want to look awkward or what have you. I'm sure that's the schoolgirl in me in the playground. You don't want to be the one. You don't want to be the one standing on your own, do you? And so I just thought, well, I'm either going to run now or I'm just going to do it. And so I went and tried to infiltrate a small group of people, ones that looked the least intimidating or the least, I don't know, closed. And I did have small talk with some people throughout the evening. And then it came to the point where there was a buffet. And I remember standing in the queue, trying to get a bit of eye contact with people, but they were still stood in their 2s and 3s all talking. And I just stood there like a very lonely soul. And I just had to breathe through it. And I didn't have half of the skills that I've probably acquired since. So I felt very, very nervous. And I think this is one of the reasons why I run my networking events how I do, actually. Very, very key. And I tell people I understand it. I'm quite upset now. It was hard. It was so hard in that queue, but I stuck it out. And then towards the end of the evening, I saw this lady that I've already talked about, who I knew was a local business owner. And I just thought, right, now or never. And I just went up to her and I said, I love your work, but I don't know how you do it. And it was at that point she said, oh my gosh, it's such a juggle. It's so hard. And I loved her honesty, because from the outside, she was doing it. How does she do it? Well, here's an example. She's doing it all. She's got the business. She's kind of got the vibe. She's got the family at home. She looked like she had it all together, but it was that honest answer that really opened up our conversation. And so I almost then interviewed her and, asked her to tell me more. And that was when I offered to see if I could help at all. I think that evening, though incredibly challenging for me, was a pivotal moment in my life.
Oh, there's so much in that. And it's leading, I'm wanting to dive straight into your networking events. But before we do that, you mentioned, I'm sure I didn't have anywhere near as many of the tools that I've got now. And yet I heard you saying I had to breathe through it, and knowing the power of breath to just regulate us and reset us and help us to focus. And I heard you say to yourself, it's now or never. There's a couple of sort of mantras or affirmations that I've heard you mention even over the course of our conversation so far that I thought, oh yeah, that's the kind of thing that works for me. And just also that willingness to have a go, just see what happens. So knowing you were going to that networking event and having a go at doing it on your own, and knowing that you could run out if you want to, you could leave if you want to, but just that another level of, okay, well, I'll stay and I'll try and find someone. And yes, this feels uncomfortable. But it seemed like there was a knowing that you had some limits and an escape route in mind was there. But yes, knowing even then you had some tools to help you get to that point where you were then able to approach someone that was perhaps starting to look like one of your kind of, how does she do it people.
Yeah, I mean, that is where it began, which was incredible, really. And I think that if I'd have taken someone, had I taken a friend, a great friend with me that night, we'd have had a lovely evening, and we'd have probably sat in a two because, everyone else seemed kind of already grouped off. But that would have been all it was. And I wouldn't have remembered that evening now, all of these years later.
Oh, the power of just nudging ourselves out of our comfort zone and trying something on our own. Love that. So bring us up to date then from that evening and that VA work that started as I might be able to help, to your paid client. Take us from there to where you are now.
Yeah, thank you. So essentially I was a VA for a few years, loved it, really enjoyed it. Went to some networking events, which were quite a struggle for me to get to, actually, because I had my youngest in preschool, my eldest in school. So the only way I could get to these events on time was to ask my husband to do the school run so I could drive off to these places and be there for the start, because I wasn't able to take my children with me. But I made it happen, and I felt very grateful that I could. But I think that sowed a little seed for me. It's like, oh, well, these events are really good. I get to meet other business owners, but crumbs, if I didn't have my husband at home working for himself, if he was up in London like he used to be, I couldn't have done that. So that sowed a little seed that just was sort of sitting there. And yeah, I continued with the business, really enjoyed it, thrived, brilliant customers and what have you. And then I thought, actually, I want to have a networking event that really works in perhaps ways that some of the ones I was experiencing weren't quite ticking all the boxes for me. And so I somehow decided that even though, despite being very nervous at networking events, I would start my own on the side of Wrapped Up Admin, which was my business. And I did, and I started small and was terrified. And then it grew, and so did my confidence, and just the beauty of bringing women together and encouraging them to share and to collaborate and inspire one another was just incredible. And so I ran the networking alongside the virtual assistant business. But then I got to the point where I thought, well, hang on a minute, I'm doing more than virtual assistant work in a way. And the stuff that I was really enjoying was the in-person stuff. And so I started a new company. Yeah. And that was How Does She Do It?
And I can see it for obviously you, if you're listening, can't see, but Jo is grinning at this point, grinning, and rightly so. That transition from I was doing one thing. And what I noticed in what you said too was having been nervous about networking and kind of deciding to do networking on your own terms and doing them and starting small. And then as you did more, that was where your confidence came from. It seems there's a real pattern of, by having a go at something and seeing that it can work, that's what enables you to feel more confident and capable of what you're doing. Would that be fair?
Very fair. And I think that it also enables me to offer such an enriching experience through my events, because I know what the difficulties might be for someone, whether that's logistical or, within themselves. My heart pounded and my hands were all clammy, and I was so scared at probably the first 15 networking events I ever went to as a guest. So you could look at that evidence and say, well, why on earth would you think that standing up and actually hosting an event of your own would be a good idea? But it's a bit like the going to the that social event that I talked about. That scared me as well, but look where it got me. And I think that I talk about stepping out of my comfort zone an awful lot, but hopefully people will understand that there's a reason I speak about it.
And that speaking from a place of experience is so much more powerful. I'm thinking about the fact that running a networking event came absolutely from a place of, I don't like these other kind of networking events, and I want women to feel that they have a place. And I know from your events, even the timing of it and how welcoming you are of however and with whomever people are able to show up. So if you can only come and you've got a little one with you, that's okay, because you know that just being able to come and meet with another group of women is the most important thing.
That's rather than isolated at home. Going back to that isolation piece, women shouldn't feel that they have to do it all alone, and to be in a safe space with other people, whether you've got a business or whether you're thinking about having a business, is it's really valuable.
I love that breadth that you offer, that even if you're thinking about it, you don't have to be coming to one of your events as someone who's run a business for however many years and is there to meet with other business owners. It's the dipping the toe in the water bit. It's that gentle, tiny step out of your comfort zone into a world of possibility that you offer for people too.
Very much so. And that all of the knowledge that is shared at these events as well, the breadth is just enormous. It's incredible, because we're not just talking about the knowledge people have in their business right now. We're talking about everything they've ever been through or everything they're aspiring to. And all of this stuff gets talked about and shared, and people are so inspired and motivated by it, and people are relieved when they're able to share that they might be having a struggle of a time as well. So nothing's off limits, and we're not a sell kind of setup either. And I should add that it's not that I went to networking events and I thought they were all awful either. I took from networking events, the vibes that I liked, but I also then left the ones that didn't fit with my vision. They just didn't take part in the how does she do it sort of idea.
And talking of the how does she do it idea, you didn't stop at networking events. Your business now incorporates more than just the networking events. So tell us a bit more about the other strands. I know you have your mastermind groups, you have your podcast that we are demonstrating as we speak, but tell us a bit more about how and what enabled you to branch into those other areas.
I love the idea that I can support a woman who runs her own business in a unique way. And when I say unique, what I mean is it's a very heartfelt and soul-led way, I would say, because I believe that although our businesses are an intrinsic part of us, the business is in there somewhere because it's come from that seed of an idea within. It's come from a seed of an idea inside of us, and it's grown, and we've nurtured it, we've worked through it, we've gone through the ups and downs with it. And so the way that I work with women is I'm thinking about life as well as the business. Is when you work for yourself, if there's something big going on in your life, but you're trying to do something really big in your business as well, both things have got to be addressed. Both have got to be worked through. And I like to help women look from the outside in. Because as I said, our businesses are so intrinsically part of us that sometimes as a business owner, it's actually quite difficult to step outside of ourselves and look at it from that outside position. And so I work as a business mentor, a business buddy, your extra pair of eyes and ears sort of thing, and certainly ideas generator as well, which, we can stem that back to that first non-paying client. So I started off doing one-to-one brainstorm work and booster session work where I get really involved in the person's business and absolutely love bringing ideas, working through ideas with them and helping them grow those ideas, but also their confidence and pushing out of their comfort zones as well. And it was actually a one-to-one client that said to me, Jo, I've adored my time with you. Have you ever thought about working in groups as well? Because she said it would be amazing to have you lead a few of us, and the impact you could make would be huge. And I remember looking at her kind of going, that's very kind of you, but no, I do not have the confidence to do that. And yeah, she wouldn't let it go. She said, well, look, I'm just going to put it there that if you do offer that, I would like to be in your first group program. And she absolutely did. And she said, I'll pay whatever you charge. This is not a matter of, it's not cost related. I will pay whatever you charge. I want to continue with you if you do group work. And so she almost dared me, and I can't resist a dare. And I think it was like Facebook Friday, the promo day the next day. So yeah, I put it all together, promoted my first mastermind program, and we're about to launch number 5 and number 6 in the new year. So it's wonderful to work with groups of women, absolutely wonderful. But it's equally wonderful to work with people one-to-one. We build such strong relationships in both of those settings. There's so much icing on the cake as well. I love it.
I'm just loving too that I guess it's an openness that you have to listening to the suggestions that are coming again from this amazing community that you've created. And whilst your initial response might have been, that's lovely, but no, thank you. That sowing of a seed seems to be a real pattern in your career, that something just lands. And if it's important to you, this was part of the conversation we were having earlier, if it's important to you, it'll stick and it'll grow, and it will grow bigger and bigger and become something that then is external and offered to the world. But if it's not right for you, there's a confidence, it seems, too, in I'll let that go if that's a bit back to your networking events. I'll let go of the stuff that doesn't stick with me, that hasn't planted a seed in me, but I will follow the paths created by the seeds that really matter.
Yeah, definitely.
And so here you are now. So you are many years into your masterminding group. You are years into your How Does She Do It events that have been not just in person, but you pivoted and ran them virtually as well, didn't you? That happened last year. How was that as a shift?
Well, I was lucky. I was running online networking events anyway, alongside the in-person ones. So I was one of the lucky people that didn't have to learn Zoom very, very quickly. I had already set up, so running online networking events and online co-working events as well. So it was absolutely fine to make that change, and obviously not do any in real life events at that time. I really do miss my networking venues, I was going to say, in terms of, there are 3 venues across Surrey that we host the events at, and yeah, I'm absolutely pining for them and seeing all my ladies again.
That in-person connection. So as much as you've managed to continue to create these amazing opportunities for people to come together, it's the in-person that you're looking for.
It really is. And, the relationships that have been made in the last year or so with the online ones are really super special and super strong. And I wouldn't say they've been any less successful than the in-person ones, but I believe that there are lots of us that need that in-person connection, which I guess is why, How Does She Do It is what it is, because actually the free community that it started as alongside the networking is there because I felt lonely in my business. So I put a group out there to see if I was the only one that felt lonely running a business on my own.
And surprise, surprise, you were not.
No, funny that.
That power of the groups to bring us together. And that seems to be a real theme and a thread in your work of just ensuring that there are spaces where women feel supported by each other. Again, it's now making me think back to that isolation that you experienced and how you want to ensure that there are there is support for other women in place.
Yeah, I don't want anyone feeling like that.
Really special. I guess I'm wondering whether to ask, I don't know whether it feels too meta, but to ask about this podcast. What, as the kind of final piece, I don't want to say final piece of your jigsaw. I'm sure there are more pieces of your jigsaw still to come, but in terms of this podcast and deciding to interview women, tell us a bit more about this and how this came about.
I have dreamt of having my own podcast for a good few years, probably about 3 years before I actually went for it. And it was one of these dreams. And I thought, I could do that. I could do it. But when you've got something in your head like that, and there are many other things that are currently still in the head, and as far as I'm concerned, yeah, I'm doing it, but I haven't actually done it yet. When it's up in your head, in my case anyway, I think, yeah, I can do that. I'll do that one day. But one day, quite often with me as someone who's trying to be someone who's a recovering procrastinator and perfectionist, delightful combination those two things are. When was I going to make it happen? And I got to the point where I thought, well, I've said this to enough friends that I'm going to do this, but I'm beginning to look like a little bit of a silly thing, because if you keep talking about something but you don't do it, people are just going to think you're full of hot air. So I just thought maybe it's time for me to have another challenge. And the podcast felt like a very big challenge. It felt like a mountain to me, because I don't know about everyone else, but I'm not the most technical person. I certainly have no idea about all of the tech stuff that goes with setting up a podcast. So I was almost using that as an excuse. And so when I came across someone who did this for a living, I just thought, well, this is my opportunity. I can go for this, or I can just sort of ponder and not do anything for a bit longer. And so I put my money where my mouth was. And that was the great thing for me, because although I had imposter syndrome, who would want to listen to me or what have you, I thought, just give it a go. And so I committed. I signed up, and then I had to make it happen. And the reason I was passionate about it is because I'm surrounded by all of these amazing women, much like yourself. And I wanted to highlight real women that were out there. And I wanted to highlight that it's not all amazing either. I wanted honesty and authenticity to be spoken. And so I had to overcome my anxiety, which really held me back. But because I'd paid someone to do the launch, if you like, I couldn't let them down. Do you ever find that you'd let yourself down, but you wouldn't let someone else down?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's how I often, that's where the self-care thing can slip in, is that, well, I'll do everything for everybody else, because you don't want to let everybody else down, but for yourself. So that accountability piece, I've noticed that more and more with coaching clients, and even in my Facebook group, when people even type something, say it out loud to someone else, a bit like you said, I told enough people now that I kind of had to do it.
Yeah.
And that can really help. That can be part of that nudge when we are feeling less than good enough. Just, oh, okay, I'll give it a go. I'll see, again, that piece around, I'll give it a go. I'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. And I really would urge people, and I certainly do it with my clients, to, put something out there, say it out loud. Or if you're not ready to say it out loud yet, write an affirmation that you stick on the fridge, and you're seeing it every day, and you're beginning to believe in yourself a little bit more, to then take it to the point where you perhaps will share it out loud. And then what's the next move? You've kind of got to do it. However hard it is, it's always worth it for the experience.
And here you are, many, many, many podcast episodes later, having done it. That must be an amazing feeling.
I just got all tingles all the way through me. Goosebumps are going crazy, because I'm so proud of myself that I have done this.
We are kind of coming towards the end of our episode, and there are 3 questions that I know you always ask of podcast guests. So I am going to, again, keep flipping the tables and turn them towards you. And the first question is, what is the toughest thing you find about working for yourself?
It's got to be the loneliness. And that is obviously where the community and the networking was born from, because I think we're so honoured to be able to work for ourselves and have all these amazing opportunities, flexibility, and so much more. But I think that the loneliness is certainly something that has been the biggest struggle for me. And of course, that's been highlighted during the pandemic as well.
Thanks for sharing that, Jo. And you touched on a couple of best bits, but what would you say are the best things about working for yourself?
I would say, apart from being able to be there for my family, which I think is major, I would say that the best thing about working for myself is being able to push out of my comfort zone and grow as much as I desire, and challenge myself in ways that I know will benefit me without having to, I guess, work to someone else's agenda. So I can put myself out there and absolutely grow and learn from it.
I love that. And I love that it's on your terms. That's a big part of it. And I vividly remember you asking me this question as your final question on the episode I was part of. So I've gone all kind of tingly getting to do the same for you. I can't wait to hear what your answer is. Aww. So you always say the name of your business is How Does She Do It? Because you believe that she doesn't do it all. Yeah. So can you tell us one thing that you do and or one thing you don't do anymore to ensure that you remain on track, healthy and happy?
I've just got the tingles too. Oh, it's so emotional hearing this. Thank you so much. Oh, goodness me. The one thing that I do is, and I've been doing this for about 6 or 7 years now, and I've got to add, there are days when I don't do it because life happens. But the one thing that I absolutely aim to do, and it really benefits me every day, is my morning routine, without a doubt. And my morning routine is something that is very sacred. It's very, very special to me. And it was born from Hal Elrod, the author who wrote The Miracle Morning. And the way that I do it now is that I make sure I go for a walk every morning. I write 10 things I'm grateful for every morning. I journal as well. And sometimes these things can't always happen together in the morning, but if they can, I think that doing them together really, really helps and it's really beneficial. But sometimes the journaling might come a bit later in the day when I put the kettle on, curl up on the sofa and make sure I take some time. And I meditate and I read. And depending on how long I've got, I might do that for, I might do, well, I'm not going to go into all the details in terms of timings, but, you could argue that if you have hardly any time at all, you could do a 1-minute walk to the end of the street and back, 1 minute writing a sentence, how you're feeling, 1 piece of gratitude, 3 deep breaths in and out, and promise to read your book before you go to bed that night or something. But for me, when I do my morning routine, which is nearly every day, it's a fuel for me. It's a really positive fuel for me.
I can feel it. I felt my body just relax and calm even listening to that process. And I love what you said too about just reminding us that we don't need to spend ages doing these things. It can be, like you said, a few cycles of breath. And I'm feeling X. It doesn't have to be lengthy. It's just about that practice of taking time for yourself.
Very much so. And I just very quickly add that when my youngest was younger, when I started this, instead of going for the morning walk because I needed to be there because they were younger then, I did yoga instead. And I know some people said, I couldn't possibly do yoga in the morning with my little toddler running around. And I said, well, I just always said to him and my eldest, it's quiet time now. And it wasn't just quiet time for mummy. It's quiet time now in the mornings. You're welcome to come down and read a book or what have you. And sometimes he'd come and do a little down dog inside of my downward dog. But it was just a time for calm. So I guess I just want to say that someone might listen to what I've just said and go, well, it's all right for her, but I've got a baby, I've got a toddler or what have you, or other pressures. But you can work these things to, work around your life. It is doable and it is beneficial to everyone, I think.
Well, and when you start to show and model that example of taking quiet time to yourself, what does that give permission for for other people in your family to do for themselves too. I think it's a wonderful example to set.
A positive ripple effect all round, I think.
Absolutely. Well, that for me feels like the theme of what you've been doing for the last few years, Jo, that positive ripple effect from all your experiences and how you've used them to shape this amazing community for women in all the forms it's taken. I know it's been emotional for you this morning in reflecting on that and thinking about it, but what a wonderful gift it is that you give to women in your community every day, and that you're giving in sharing your experiences today. And so I guess before we close, is there anything you'd like to share in terms of how women can work with you moving forward?
Yeah, thank you. Cool, I'm full of tears here. It's been emotional. It's been really, really beautifully emotional. So thank you. What I would like to just talk about is that I was going to start my next mastermind program in January. But having listened to my heart the other day and realized that there's been an awful lot going on, I've decided to put that back to February. So if anyone would like to consider working with me, and there's no pressure at all, we'll pop a link down in the show notes and you can click there and we can just have a really gentle, no pressure conversation on the phone before or after Christmas to see whether working with me might be something that you'd really benefit from.
And there I hear that honesty and authenticity that you were drawn to in that conversation with the woman at the networking event. And that's how it's one of the cornerstones I feel of your business and what makes it really special. Jo, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you this morning and having the opportunity to ask questions of you rather than the other way around. And I'm sure people will take so much away from listening to your story and what's at the absolute heart of what you do day in, day out. So thank you. And thank you for allowing me to do this.
Thank you so much. I'm going to say thank you for having me. I felt so safe and so supported. And it's just been an absolute honor to do this with you. So thank you so much, Pam. Thank you so much for listening today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, I'd love you to take a moment to share and subscribe too. Come and join me over at How Does She Do It Life on both Facebook and Instagram. And until we speak again, I wish you a wonderful week ahead.